I have a miraculous condition that is seen only in very few people in the world. When you find out what it is, I'm sure you'll be very surprised and will probably wish you had it too. But please wait until you hear the whole story. I'm sure you're going to change your mind because, as you will soon see, this is in no way a precious gift bestowed on me. It's definitely a curse. Before starting elementary school, I was always at home. My mom wouldn't let me go to preschool or kindergarten. I really wanted to go to kindergarten because my cousin Casey was going, and I wanted to be just like her. But no matter how much I begged her, my mom wouldn't let me. I rarely saw my dad because he was traveling for work all the time. He was home for only a few days a month. One time when he was home, I asked him, "Dad, why can't I go to kindergarten like Casey? Will you talk to Mom? I really want to go." My dad shrugged. "I told your mother many times, but she won't listen. She says you'll go to elementary school. Your mother is the most stubborn person in the world. I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do about it." My dad was my last hope, but when he also told me that I couldn't go to kindergarten, I started crying. My mom was making dinner in the kitchen. She ran over to me when she heard me crying. She grabbed my hand and took me to my room. Then she said, "Agnes, dear, please don't cry when your father's here." She always used to tell me this. I was so little. I couldn't think of asking my mom, "Why do you not want me to cry when my father's around?" I was able to find out the reason many years later. Thankfully, my mom kept her promise when it came time for me to start school. Of course, she wanted me to start my education, too. But on the first day, she told me over and over, "No matter what happens, don't ever cry at school. It's very important. Do you understand, Agnes?" Even though I said, "Yes, Mommy," every time, she kept telling me the same thing every day. When I would come home from school, she would ask, "Honey, did you cry at school?" In the morning, as she was dropping me off, she'd say, "No crying at school, no matter what happens." My mom's obsession with my crying at school continued for years. When I was a little older, I tried asking her why she was so concerned about it. Mom would say, "You're too young. I will explain it to you when you are a little older," and wouldn't say anything else. Back then, I had a crush on a boy at school named Brody. I thought he also liked me because he would do all kinds of things to try to get my attention. One day, he was doing skateboard tricks in the schoolyard to impress me. At the same time, he was looking at me and checking to see if I was watching him. All of a sudden, his skateboard flew out from under his feet, and he fell really badly. I ran over to him right away. He was in so much pain that he started crying, not caring that I was standing next to him. He was sobbing uncontrollably. That moment, I noticed that liquid was coming out of his eyes and running down his cheeks. I was really surprised to see this because that's not what happens when I cry. I couldn't help myself and even touched his tear with the tip of my finger. Brody thought I was showing him affection and started crying more easily. And thanks to this, I was able to take a closer look at the liquid coming out of his eyes. You must be wondering why I was so surprised. Because when I cried, instead of liquid, I had small glass-like particles coming out of my eyes. Until then, I had never seen someone crying up close. That's why the liquid coming out of Brody's eyes had really surprised me. When I got back home, my mom asked me her usual question, "Did you cry at school?" I said to her, "No, I didn't, but a friend of mine did," and told her about what happened. There were lots of questions in my mind. Was it Brody who cried in a strange way, or was it me? Did other people also have liquid coming out of their eyes, or did they have the small particles like me? I wanted to know which one of us was normal. My mom took a deep breath. Then she said, "Agnes, what I'm about to tell you will need to stay as our secret. You can't tell this to anyone, including your father." She started explaining that, first off, that liquid is called a tear, and told me that normally when people cry, salt water or tears come out of their eyes. But because I was a special kid, I cried differently. Then she added, "There's something else that is important for you to know. What comes out of your eyes is not glass, it's diamonds." That was the day I found out that diamonds are very valuable. They're so valuable that if we sold the little diamond crumbs that come out when I cry, we could buy a luxury home. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So why don't we?" I asked. My mom said, "Because if people find out you're crying diamonds, that might have really dangerous consequences." "What kind of dangerous consequences?" I asked. And my mom said in a worried voice, Agnes, bad men might kidnap you. Then they'd force you to cry all the time so that the diamonds come out. The mafia may hold you hostage every single day of your whole life. Even though I was young, I understood the gravity of the situation. I promised my mom that I would never mention this to anyone ever. This would be our secret. About 4 years after that conversation, my parents were involved in a car crash. My dad did not have any serious injuries. But despite the doctor's best efforts, my mom didn't make it. I felt like I was in a bad dream. I wouldn't be able to see the most beloved person in my life anymore. Despite my grief, I kept the promise that I had made to her. Not even one speck of diamond came out of my eyes at my mom's funeral. I didn't cry at all. People probably thought that I never cried because I was in shock, but that wasn't the case. The truth was that every minute I was alone, I spent crying for my mom. I was putting the small diamonds that come out of my eyes into a bag and hiding them in a closet in the basement. The basement was the safest place in our house because nobody had used it for a long time. I didn't collect the diamonds because I wanted to sell them. I had to hide them because my secret would be out if someone had found them. Because I couldn't stay home by myself, my dad had to stop traveling. He got transferred to another department at work. I told you earlier that my dad and I didn't have the best relationship. I thought that was because we spent too little time together, but it turned out that wasn't the reason. Now he was always home, but still, we never became very close. 4.5 months after my mom's passing, my dad said to me, "There's someone in my life. I'm thinking about marrying her." I was obviously shocked, but I couldn't say anything, so I just nodded. Now I had a stepmother. I was so sad that my dad had gotten married so quickly, and his new wife didn't seem like a nice person. And if that wasn't enough, my stepmother had a daughter named Nancy, and she was just like her mom. It didn't seem possible for me to have a relationship with them. I understood that from now on, I was a stranger in my own house. After they got married, my stepmother and her daughter moved in. Thankfully, our house was big enough. I didn't have to share a room with Nancy. She got her own room, but little Miss Nancy didn't like her room. My friends come over for slumber parties all the time. Agnes's room is bigger. She should move into my room, and I into hers, she said. My dad came to tell me this. Nancy is younger than you. Let's not upset her, he said. I couldn't help it and told him what I really thought of both Nancy and her mom. I also said to him, if my mom is watching us right now, I'm sure she's very upset that you've gotten married so quickly. My dad's face turned red and he screamed, "You're switching rooms with Nancy tomorrow. From now on, you will eat your dinner in your room. I don't want to see your face for a long time." That day, I cried in my room for hours. Naturally, a lot of tiny diamonds came out of my eyes. They were all over the place as I was stomping on the floor with anger. When I woke up in the morning, I picked them up one by one and put them in small plastic bags. That afternoon, Nancy and I switched rooms. I had carefully picked up all the diamonds that had fallen around while I was crying. But unfortunately, I did the stupidest thing and left one of the bags under the bed. When Nancy found the plastic bag, she took it to her mom. Her mom figured out right away that the bag was full of diamonds. But still, she wanted to make sure by showing them to a jeweler she knew. When the man confirmed it, my stepmother told my dad about what happened. Nancy came to my room and told me my dad wanted to see me. I had no idea what had happened, but I still felt that something wasn't quite right. When I walked into the living room and saw the little bag full of diamonds, I was so shocked. My dad asked me, "Agnes, where did you find these?" I couldn't answer at first. I started rambling incoherently. My dad said, "There's a fortune in that bag. I'm asking you again, where did you find these diamonds?" I was never able to lie to anyone's face in my whole life, and now I was going to tell the truth again. "Dad, they come out of my eyes when I cry," I said. My stepmother and Nancy burst out laughing. My stepmother said, "Did you say your eyes? Couldn't you make up a better lie? This is the worst lie I have ever heard in my life." I told them it wasn't a lie, but they didn't believe me. My dad said, "Agnes, you're embarrassing me. Tell us the truth now." "I am telling the truth," I screamed and started crying. Of course, tiny diamonds started coming out of my eyes as I cried. My dad, my stepmother, and Nancy were staring at me astonished. After witnessing this scene, they were finally convinced I was telling the truth. As you might guess, my life completely changed after that day. I went through things that you can't even imagine. You won't believe the things my stepmother did to me after learning about my condition. However, I'll have to tell you about that in another video because we're out of time. If you'd like to hear the rest of my story, please let me know in the comments. I'll get that second video ready in no time. See you later. Bye.
Story is about my boyfriend Neil and how he pressured me into having sextuplets. It all started when we were watching a reality TV show about a girl who was raising her quadruplets. People loved the show, and the girl was making millions of dollars. After watching a few episodes, my boyfriend Neil said to me, "Hey, if this girl got a TV show because she had quadruplets, why don't you get pregnant with quintuplets? We would have one more kid than her and therefore become even more famous and rich." Okay, becoming rich and famous was the worst reason to have kids. I told him he was crazy. I mean, I wasn't ready to start a family and I never wanted lots of children. If we were going to have quintuplets, I'd have to have in vitro fertilization. That's a very painful process where the doctors take eggs out of my ovaries to fertilize them and to put them back into me. It's painful, expensive, and without any guarantee of success. I told him that there was no way I would ever do that. But Neil just ignored me and continued to pressure me into having quintuplets, saying that all would be fine once we were rich and famous. But I don't think it's good for children to grow up with cameras following them all the time. I want my babies to have a normal childhood. And why would any TV crew want to film us anyway? We're just ordinary people. I tried to laugh it off as another one of Neil's stupid ideas, but he begged me for months to have quintuplets, and I began to wonder if maybe it was a good idea after all. I mean, having a big family might be great, and the government gives financial support for each child, so we'd be able to afford to take care of them. Well, one night, I had a dream where I told my boyfriend Neil that I wanted to have quintuplets. It seemed so real and so right. I figured it was my subconscious telling me we should go for it. So the next morning, I told Neil I was ready to become pregnant with quintuplets. He started cheering and got all excited and promised me that this was the best decision I've ever made. But when we went to the fertility doctor and told him about our plans, he warned us that multiple births were very dangerous, both for the mother and for her babies. That's why he refused to help us. But that didn't stop my boyfriend from finding another doctor who we had to pay extra money to implant 12 fertilized eggs into my ovaries. The problem is that in vitro fertilization doesn't always work, so we didn't know how many of the fertilized eggs would survive. It could have been 0, but it could also have been 10, leaving me with decuplets. You can imagine how scared I was that something would go wrong, but at least I had Neil by my side. He told me that in the end, the only thing that mattered was that we were together. But after 2 weeks, I could feel I was pregnant, but I still didn't know how many babies I had in my tummy. We still had to wait for our 12-week ultrasound. When the big day came, the doctor took a very close look. He wanted to make sure he wasn't missing a baby. But after 20 minutes of looking at the monitor, he told us he was seeing 5 heartbeats, and we were expecting quintuplets. My boyfriend and I immediately started screaming out of joy. Everything was going perfect and as planned. And then, things got really bad. After a few months, my belly got so big that all I could do was lay in bed. I even stopped going to the toilet and had to pee into a portable women's urinal. It was a difficult pregnancy, and then I developed preeclampsia, so I had to have an emergency C-section, and my babies were born prematurely at 25 weeks. When they took me down to see my babies, I thought I was going crazy. There weren't just 5 babies. There were 6 babies. The doctor had overlooked one of my babies during the ultrasound, so we ended up with sextuplets. I guess you can imagine how happy my boyfriend was when he got the news. For him, having sextuplets was much better than having quintuplets. But, more importantly, my boyfriend Neil turned out to be a great dad. Today, our babies are 1 year old, and taking care of them requires my boyfriend and me to work as a team. Unfortunately, though, we don't have our own TV show yet. We contacted more than 20 TV networks, but none of them wanted to work with us. But Neil and I already have a new plan. We will start our own YouTube channel and show our crazy life with sextuplets. We read an article about this 8-year-old boy, Ryan. who is one of the most successful YouTubers in the world, making $20 million per year. And he even has his own line of toys. It's so crazy. I also started watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and the more I watch it, the more I want to be famous myself. I know how stupid that sounds, but wouldn't it be an exciting and fun life? Well, I guess that becoming famous is even more important to my boyfriend Neil than it is to me, so I'm sure he will figure out a way to make it happen. But whether we get famous or not, I'm already happy with how things are. My family is absolutely perfect.